A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to see.
The f***ing grow up, mother. Are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Gallant Says podcast on this Monday, January 30th of 2023. I'm Paul Gallant, and this is a show that you can watch live and interact with live at twitch.tv/Gallant Says or youtube.com/Paul Gallant. You can also listen to it in podcast form, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. If you haven't already, subscribe, rate, review, roast. Tell a friend. Every little bit of support matters. Conference championship weekend came and went. First game of the day yesterday, we saw the Philadelphia Eagles kick the absolute shit out of the San Francisco 49ers. It was an ass kicking. I mean, not just the first drive of the game where Philadelphia marched down rather easily, perhaps with some help from the referees, but also it's Hassan Reddick, the first couple of plays he's out on the field, absolutely ending Brock Purdy, giving him an elbow injury that he was never really able to come back from. Honestly, you could argue that Hassan Reddick also stole the ball away from Josh Johnson, who came in and got a concussion, which meant Purdy had to go back in, and Purdy wasn't 100%. That game stunk. Philadelphia's on to the Super Bowl. That was easily their most impressive victory of the season. They do deserve a lot of credit for it. We'll see how they actually fare against their old coach, Andy Reid, and the Kansas City Chiefs, because the Chiefs, on the other side of things in the AFC, took down the Cincinnati Bengals yesterday, 23-20. Now, there's lots of stuff to discuss in this actual game. Some shaky moments from the referees. I'm not just talking about what I thought was a soft, unnecessary roughness where a Bengal defender pushed Mahomes as he was going out of bounds. His momentum carried into him, and Mahomes ends up falling down. He gets called for a personal foul. 15 yards later, the Chiefs are in field goal range. There was a play a little bit earlier in that quarter where it looked like the Bengals had stopped the Chiefs on third down. The referee said, well, we weren't 100% set, so we're going to replay the down. There were some bad moments from the referees. But I think if we're being perfectly honest right now, we need to do a follow-up to a conversation that we had on this podcast on Friday. I had a lot of Chiefs fans in my mentions on TikTok coming after me because I thought it was really funny that Willie Gay, Chiefs linebacker, in the middle of a interview where he had already said, yeah, Andy Reid doesn't want us to do any trash talk, he proceeded to say that the Bengals offense wasn't very impressive. Seconds later, whether that's actually a big deal as far as trash talk goes or innocuous, it's really funny to see a guy go from saying, yeah, Andy Reid doesn't want us talking, to saying, yeah, the Bengals offense doesn't impress me. In 1 minute. That's how long it took. And given how the Bengals have been using motivational ploys over the last couple of weeks, Zach Taylor even talking about how I'm going on the internet and I'm looking for things to rile my troops up with, I assumed that the Bengals would win the game. But I guess I gave the Kansas City Chiefs bulletin board material because I didn't believe that the bulletin board material that they had trumped what the Bengals had. But it did. It did. The Bengals were very, very cocky going into this game, entirely based off of one quote, which the Chiefs have turned into the biggest mountain. I'll give them a lot of credit. If this actually motivated them, great. Derpy Entertainment's very excited that the Bengals are out since he is a Steelers fan. It all started in the middle of the Bills and Bengals game, where Mike Hilton, who is a Bengals cornerback, had This to say while looking directly at a camera, and the Bengals with the game completely in hand against Buffalo.
We'll see y'all in Burrowhead. Yeah, baby. Let that sink in your mind. We'll see y'all in Burrowhead.
We'll see y'all in Burrowhead, referring to the Chiefs Stadium, Arrowhead Stadium. I had heard this thrown around a couple of times over the course of the week, and I assumed that some Bengals fan called Arrowhead Stadium Burrowhead Stadium, and then it gained steam. It picked up and became what it ultimately became for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I didn't think it was as big of a deal when I first heard about it. Kansas City clearly felt otherwise, though, and perhaps I am at fault here for missing this. Chris Jones is the Chiefs' defensive tackle. He was an absolute game wrecker in this game. He also had his own thoughts on Burrowhead Gate, as I guess we're going to fucking call it, before the game.
It's like a full 360, right? Same thing, same circumstances under Burrowhead Stadium, so feeling good about it.
Did you just say Burrowhead Stadium?
Yeah, Burrowhead Stadium, right? Yeah. Take care. See y'all at Burrowhead Stadium. It's like a full 360, right?
He's not happy that the Bengals called Arrowhead Stadium Burrowhead Stadium. Maybe this is just going to be motivation for Chris Jones. No. And I'm starting to wonder if perhaps bulletin board material and motivational ploys have officially jumped the shark. It's a funny nickname. Mike Hilton said Burrowhead Stadium. Joe Burrow is 3-0 against Patrick Mahomes, so in the moment, does make sense. But the Chiefs, they are not letting this one go anytime soon. Here is another video. This is right at the end of the game. Tracy Wolfson gets Patrick Mahomes in front of her, and the next thing you know, as Patrick Mahomes is trying to thank the man upstairs, Travis Kelce comes in and provides us with this.
Thank God, man. Woo! Burrowhead my ass. Woo! It's Mahomes' house.
Burrowhead my ass. It's Mahomes' house. It was pretty funny. Wrestling heel moves by Travis Kelce, who would deliver some more. We also heard from Chris Jones, courtesy of my friend James Palmer of the NFL Network. He decided to elaborate on why he felt so miffed about Burrowhead, which is, again, like I guess the biggest scandal in NFL history.
You know, you guys had to get after Joe Burrow quick, and this one you were able to do it.
The best in the game right here. This is the best in the game right here. Ain't no question.
I know you wanted to get over the hump in the postseason, had to have a sack. You did your business today.
Yeah, I let my emotions all bottle up throughout the week. There's a lot of talking going on. I'm not really much of a talker. It's a full circle, 360, man. These are moments I prepared for all offseason. I dedicated my offseason to this moment last year when I missed 2 sacks to end the game, and I put it up on myself. This game, we gonna end it up front, and that's what we did. We got a resilient group in our room, sharp with the D-line, and these guys fought through all night, man.
The last thing you said to us when you walked off the podium here in Arrowhead was everybody enjoyed Burrowhead. Did that motivate you all week?
Hey, let me tell y'all something, man. Don't ever, and I'm looking at the camera when I say this, disrespect Arrowhead. I don't care how many times you done beat us. Don't ever disrespect Arrowhead Stadium. And G-E-H-A!
I gotta ask you one more about what your quarterback did to.
So that is Chris Jones, who's the best defensive player on the Chiefs, and is the main reason I think that they were able to slow the Bengals offense down. A Bengals offense that maybe wasn't as impressive as many believed it to be. Willie Gay, he gets to do a victory lap after, I guess, what went down yesterday. Jones brings something up in that clip, and this is why I'm wondering if motivational ploys and bulletin board material have jumped the shark. Jones said that the Bengals were talking all week about Burrowhead Stadium. Maybe people online were. Bengals fans, Bengals talk show hosts. But the only person who said anything about Burrowhead, to my knowledge, is Mike Hilton. That's it. You can turn whatever you see in front of you into some sort of motivational tactic for yourself. If you really try, you will always be able to spin something. I just feel like this one being spun into what it's been spun into is kind of ridiculous to the point where it's jumped the shark. But you know what? It's very funny to see the Kansas City Chiefs players continuing to bring up how offended they were by Burrowhead Stadium. Here we now have, of the Kansas City Chiefs, Juan Thornhill talking about the exact same thing.
Talking all week. How did it feel? I wasn't talking all week. They was talking all week about Burrowhead and all that bullshit. And then what happened? Man, look at the scoreboard. We the AFC champs. We the AFC champs. Write that shit down for next year.
Write that shit down for next year. Look, puff your chest out, beat it. You found something to motivate yourselves. But we're not done. Everyone on the Chiefs came with the knives to stab those who would dare call, what did Chris Jones say? It's like EHRCO Stadium at Arrowhead or something like that. Here's some more. And this time, poor Eli Apple, the guy just can't get a break as far as, and he asks for it. I mean, he is a little bit like, I guess Patrick Beverly, the Patrick Beverly of the NFL. But here's some more Chiefs. It looks like this is Juan Thornhill as well. In addition to Justin Reed.
Eli Apple, I'm gonna smoke one for you. I forgot Eli Apple.
Hey, Eli, Burrowhead, hey, them tuna in the can motherfuckers that's going home right now.
We gonna smoke one for y'all.
I'm telling you. Hey, and I did everything I said I'd do. I locked down. The niggas ain't getting shit.
Okay, well, calm down, Justin Reed at the end. He's like, yeah, hey, by the way, I locked down the tight end, even though I'm a safety, and that's not really how it works, but I locked him fucking down, bro. Okay, relax a little bit. But again, Burrowhead drove these guys crazy. And I think it's hysterical that all of them were bringing it up. And look, this is how it works. This is how trash talk works. If somebody has said something that offends you, and all of a sudden you beat them, then of course they're going to come back and rub it in your face. This is how it works. But it really does feel like they kept on reminding themselves that Mike Hilton, not the rest of the Bengals, Mike Hilton said, yeah, Burrowhead. And then that meant the entire Bengals team was talking shit about the Chiefs. I think that the Bengals realized that even though they were 3-0 against Kansas City, that this is a very close matchup, that all the last two games in particular were down to the wire. So this one probably would have been as well, even if the Bengals were 3-0 over the last 2 years against Kansas City. And obviously it goes down the way that it did. I love it, but I do feel that motivational ploys like this have jumped the shark. Some comments on twitch.tv/Gallant says, Poor Marine is in the house. What up, Paul? Serious question. Y'all got me on the watch list over at ESPN 97.5, 92.5. Apparently, we have a banning problem on the Twitch at ESPN 97.5. I only know this because people bring it up in the Twitch chat. I honestly have no idea. I really don't know how any of it works. I don't ban anyone from my show, but I don't know how to even operate the Twitch, to be perfectly honest. We got Spoon in the house, too, on twitch.tv/Gallant says, calling me the mayor. Congratulations to your Chiefs, Spoon. Derpy Entertainment, Steelers fan that he is, says, Paul, they the Bengals, man. But they made the Super Bowl last year. I don't know that Steelers fans can still call the Bengals the Bungles, just given the way the last couple of years have gone. And I think there's a couple of Steelers-Bengals games. The Steelers won at least one of those games. Was that the one that was early on this year? But the Bengals have clearly been the better franchise for the last 2 seasons. Buckeyes 1-1-1-0. The Steelers showed the blueprint to beat the Bengals, and the Chiefs were the first team to use that in the playoffs. And look how rattled and stale their offense looked. Well, I mean, they were missing 3 offensive linemen. And I think that if Buffalo had slightly better pass rush, that the Bills would have had a pretty good chance at winning that game too. I think from a talent perspective, like Cincy's made the most of what they have, and offensively they definitely have some names because you have Jamar Chase, who is awesome. You have T. Higgins, you got Joe Mixon, and of course you have Joe Burrow. But after that, can you name a lot of players on their defense if you're not a Bengals fan or not an AFC North fan? I would venture to say that most people would probably struggle to think up some names. Anyway, though, the Kansas City Chiefs used what was available to them as motivation. Some are arguing that this was actual motivation. And I suppose it could be. I know that Bill Belichick once gave a speech to his Patriots players before Super Bowl 39 between the Eagles and Patriots. He basically ran through the itinerary of what the Eagles Super Bowl parade had been planned to be. And these are things that you make if you're just a smart event organizer, especially in the wake of 9/11. You got to organize what the event's going to be. You got to run it by security and cops and things like that. I think there's a certain point where you have to do some planning in ahead. It's not a diss of the New England Patriots in that spot. But this was an outright diss by the mayor of Cincinnati, who is quite the nerd. Anyway, his name is Aftab Puraval. He is the 70th mayor of Cincinnati. Ohio born and raised, says his Twitter profile. Whitney's husband, dad to Bodie and Rami. Funnier in person, taller than you think. He, him. Here is a speech / I guess statement given out by the mayor of Cincinnati last week that has very much aged poorly.
Good afternoon, Cincinnati. I have a proclamation from the desk of the mayor. Be it proclaimed, whereas the Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Burrowgate Stadium for their 2nd consecutive AFC Championship game. Whereas at last year's game, the Bengals scored more points than the Chiefs, resulting in a Bengals victory and a Chiefs loss. Whereas Joseph Lee Burrow, who's 3-0 against Mahomes, has been asked by officials to take a paternity test confirming whether or not he's his father.
Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha, politician make joke to pander to voter base. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Here's a funny thing. It's not funny. The only thing that this is going to do, if you are someone who lives in Cincinnati, is blow up in your face. Why the fuck is this guy talking? No one in Cincinnati wants this guy to talk, right? If you're a Bengals fan and you hear this guy all of a sudden say, the results are in and Joe Burrow is Patrick Mahomes' father, you're going to roll your eyes because it's bottom of the barrel kind of joke. Anyway, after saying whereas a couple of times, the mayor of Cincinnati, Aftab Puraval, continued.
Whereas all season long, Cincinnati has been on a path of destiny, fighting it out to overcome anyone who stands between them and a Super Bowl win. And whereas Kansas City is named after its neighboring state, which is, just kind of weird.
See, another like little, Kansas City's named after, not Missouri, it's named after Kansas. Oh, God, look at me, I'm Aftab Puraval, open comedy night here in Cincinnati. I'd play the Seinfeld theme song, but I'm not allowed to, because then it'll demonetize my video. The mayor continues and finally wraps up his statement.
Now, therefore, I, Aftab Puraval, mayor of the city of Cincinnati, do hereby proclaim January 29th, 2023 as They Gotta Play Us Day in Cincinnati. Thank you.
Wow, man. What a bold statement. Politicians ruin everything when they talk about sports. And far be it from me to tell someone to stick to politics, but definitely stick to not stand-up comedy. There's not a lot of energy behind that. There's no facial gesticulations to add a little flavor on top of that. He said whereas 6 times, which is a word that needs to go away. Just bad. But that's what happens whenever politicians decide to try and talk about sports so that they can pander to their base. Some comments, twitch.tv/Gallant says, Buckeyes 1110 continues, you press the receivers, as far as stopping the Bengals, and blitz to give a little time. Burrow and the receivers do not like to get physical. I don't agree with that when it comes to Jamar Chase. I think Jamar Chase is a very physical receiver. There's a reason that they like to throw the ball to him in the flats and just say, hey, go and do your thing. And he's not Deebo Samuel, but he's pretty damn good. Spoon DJ says, listen, the Bengals are a great team, twitch.tv/Gallant says. 4 games separated by 12 total points. It's a great matchup, and I didn't expect the Chiefs to win. I expected Cincy to win, but I did think it was going to be relatively close until the Willie Gay comments, and I figured that the Bengals would somehow turn that molehill into a mountain. Instead, it's the Bengals who are going home because they called Arrowhead Stadium Burrowhead Stadium. Kyle Mulkey made it funny. Still Burrowhead Stadium, he writes at youtube.com/Paul Gallant. He's 3-1. Fair point. Buckeyes 1110 in response to Spoon DJ about the great teams says, there are no great teams in the NFL. Some that are above average, but calling any of these teams great is a slight to all the actual great teams there have been. I don't know about that. I feel like, given that this guy's a Steelers fan, that this is going to be something that goes all the way back to the Steelers dynasty of the 1970s when football was true football. I think that there are a couple of great teams in the league this year. I think that the Eagles are a great team this season. They have an awesome offensive line. They have an awesome defensive line. They have a great 1-2 corner combination. They have a great 1-2 wide receiver combination. Their quarterback's really the guy that you look at right now and still have some questions about, and he is an MVP finalist. I think the Eagles have put together a really incredible season, and I think you can make an argument that they're a great team. You maybe could say their resume isn't that great, but they kicked the San Francisco 49ers ass literally yesterday. And you might say, well, that's because they hurt Brock Purdy early. Well, yeah, that's because the Eagles pass rush is that good. And from a Chiefs perspective, I think being able to get back to the Super Bowl after losing Tyreek Hill, despite a defense that's not very good, it says a lot about Patrick Mahomes, who I think is definitively the best quarterback in the NFL. I think he proved that. And you should have known that going into the game anyway. I like Joe Burrow a lot, but Mahomes has more physical gifts. Mahomes is better at moving around. Mahomes is better at making every single kind of throw. Not to say Burrow can't make those throws, but I think that Mahomes is working with more. He is more of a just, I think, once in a generation kind of prospect than Burrow is. Burrow's damn good. Burrow's off to a great start in his career, but Mahomes does things that you've seen almost no quarterback do before him. And I think that that does help put Kansas City up towards that great conversation. I don't know if I go quite great, though, because of the defensive issues this year. Usually there's like 2 to 3 great teams this season in the NFL. The Bills were supposed to be a great team, and obviously they didn't even make it to the conference championship game, despite the NFL making the rules advantageous for them so that if there was another overtime game between them and Buffalo, that it wouldn't turn into whoever wins the coin toss and gets the first possession just wins the game. To go back to our friend, the mayor of Cincinnati, Travis Kelce had this to say after the victory for Kansas City, who's now on to the Super Bowl.
Hey, I got some wise words for that Cincinnati mayor. Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni.
I thought he was going to say know your role and shut your hole because that would have rhymed, but I did like that he called the mayor of Cincinnati a jabroni. I went to Wikipedia just moments ago, and I imagine that this is something that is continuing to be edited into the Wikipedia definition for the mayor of Cincinnati. But I think that if you look it up right now, the definition will say that the mayor of Cincinnati is named Mayor Jabroni, which I like. But it's really funny that the Kansas City Chiefs, who don't need much motivation. I mean, this is a Chiefs team that's now been to 5 straight AFC championships. Astros adjacent in a way. No cheating scandal or anything like that. They have now made it to their 3rd Super Bowl over this 5-year stretch. Did they really need the motivation? No, they didn't. But they found it. Burrowhead Stadium now shall be, henceforth, a slur. It has to be. Because that's the way that the Chiefs were talking about it after winning the actual game. Some comments, twitch.tv/Gallant says, hey, Paulie says E315. Spoon DJ says, agreed about the Eagles. Limnos05 says, drive by today. Sup, Paul? Man, if that penalty isn't called, it's an overtime game, and we might still be talking about Burrowhead Stadium. That's the other thing, too. I feel like a lot of the chirping, look, they won. That's all that matters. I feel like the chirping about Burrowhead would have been more merited had Kansas City won by 1 million, but they did win. Winners get to write history. Winners get to talk shit. I still think there was a chance that they could have gotten into field goal range with that next play. They would have been at the 50-yard line. 15 yards with Harrison Butker as your kicker, that's not impossible. It's not. They still could have gotten in field goal range. And I think a lot of people are pointing at that one play as what decided the game. No, it's a, I think, slow start by Cincinnati offensively. There were moments in this game where it looked like Kansas City could potentially run away with it. Cincy started off the game slow, and unlike last year's AFC Championship game where they absolutely dominated the second half, this time they really couldn't get things going until right before the very end. So I hated that call. I thought it was soft. I mean, look, he's running out of bounds. I think quarterbacks are babied too much. I don't think it's right that a quarterback is subject to different rules in the NFL, you know? I think it's kind of messed up. It's a team game, and yet the quarterback is so much bigger than the rest of the team. And I hate that if a quarterback slides and you go down low to hit him, that if you stop his forward momentum, that's considered unnecessary roughness. Or if you hit the guy like too low or too high, it's roughing the passer. If you tap your hand on his helmet, it's roughing the passer. If you go too low, I think there are way too many rules that make things better for quarterbacks. And I get it. You want to protect the quarterbacks. You want to keep them healthy. There's a memo that has been sent from the league to all these referees to keep things going. But yeah, I don't like it. I thought it was a soft call to end the game. And something I did want to touch on briefly. What the fuck is up with people who see rules and use bad rules to justify something that happened? What's up with that? When I was living in Seattle and the pandemic caused government officials to, I think, really lose their minds. You can't go here, there. You can't sit outside at a bar, for example, which unless you have a vaccination card with you. There was a lot of stuff going on that I wanted to ask questions about. And people would regularly tell me, well, that's the rule. Just follow it. Why? I can't question the rule? What if I think the rule is fucking stupid? What if I think it's crazy that speed limits in the greater Seattle area are 60 miles per hour and also think that it's crazy that people don't go well over the speed limit? I get it. You're a state that actually does have, unlike Houston, a viable form of mass transportation. But just because you're more familiar with walking or subways or light rails or buses is no reason to tell me that speeding is wrong. When a rule is in place, ask if the rule should be in place. Should it be something that has that adverse of an impact on a game? 15 yards for unnecessary roughness. Is that right? That might be too much. I feel like we should have a wide range of unnecessary roughness, because I could have taken a 5-yard penalty on that. What he did was maybe not the smartest, but it's not like he tried to kill Mahomes on the sideline or dove into his knee. He's chasing him out of bounds, and he taps him on the back shoulder, and Mahomes falls harmlessly. He's okay. And they made it seem like Mahomes got shot by a sniper. Twitch.tv/ESPN975. Speaking of funky rules and coincidences, the NFL has raised the salary cap $16.6 million, the exact amount that the Green Bay Packers are currently over the cap. Yeah, we'll see where that goes. I don't read anything into that right now. Josh Johnston on youtube.com/Paul Gallant asks, do you get road rage, Paul? Yes, all the fucking time. I'm glad that there is no microphone in my car outside of just my cell phone, because I get pissy over the smallest things. And I generally say 2 to 3 drivers per time on the road that are driving near me are fucking idiots. Even though I am not a good driver myself. I'm not. But I get impatient with slow drivers. I get really impatient with people that don't turn their blinkers on. That drives me crazy. And then you merge into another lane. Well, why didn't you do it earlier? People that don't pull all the way out into an intersection when it's a green light and they're turning left. Go out into the intersection and then wait for the cars to pass by on that yield on green and then turn left. Don't just stand here, because no one else is going to be able to get into the left-hand turn area if you don't go first. People that don't turn left on a one-way street where there's only one way to go. Especially people that don't turn, say there's 2 one-way streets. And one-way street is running perpendicular to the other one. And you're about to take a left on that street that runs perpendicular to it. You take a left there, you can take a left without the light being green. People fucking forget that. It drives me nuts. You can turn left from a one-way street onto another one-way street. There's a lot of that in downtown Houston. It drives me crazy when people don't actually turn left. Kyle Mulkey says a legal man downfield for the offensive line is the stupidest rule I've ever seen. Well, it makes sense. It does make sense. I think it has to do with screens. Say you had like an offensive lineman 10 yards downfield blocking a defensive back who was trying to cover one of your wide receivers. And obviously that probably wouldn't work out so well if you had an offensive lineman that far downfield, just because pass rushers would probably be able to get through whatever hole he leaves when he goes. But yeah, I don't think that is that bad of a rule. But anyway, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Gallant Says podcast. Make sure you don't say Burrowhead near any Kansas Cityan, because you'll motivate them to accomplish great things for the remainder of their life. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. You can also watch and interact with this podcast live weekdays, 1 to 1:30 Central Time at twitch.tv/GallantSays and youtube.com/Paul Gallant. So long, farewell, have yourselves a wonderful Monday, and we'll be back at it tomorrow at 1 o'clock.